Hello, I'm Jonathan Womack, and welcome to this edition of Community Insider. Stay tuned. Coming up, we bring you to the Creighton General Store in Coalmont, Tennessee, where we'll take you to a store that's been around for over 100 years, and the history is unbelievable. That much more right here on Community Insider. Stay tuned.
Welcome to another edition of Community Insider. Join us as we travel Middle Tennessee, uncovering history and experiencing the adventure of unique stories and events coming to you inside your community.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Womack, and welcome to this edition of Community Insiders. We bring you inside your community, and today we're actually in Coalmont, Tennessee, beautiful Coalmont, Tennessee, with Miss Lynn Wofford, and she is part of the Creighton family that has been around in this part of the woods, neck of the woods, for over 100 years. And what I mean by that is, in behind us is this historical marker, state marker, that was placed earlier in this year, commemorating and really telling a brief portion of the history of this beautiful community store that has been in operation for over 100 years. Tell us what process it was that got the marker in place, because I knew this was a part of your family. You owned it for many years,
Right.
but what really got this sign in place?
You know, this store was amazing to the community in this mountaintop, and I felt it needed to be commemorated. Certainly, since it is so old, over 100 years old. And I applied for application, sent in an application for the marker to Nashville. There is quite a process you have to go through, a lot of homework you have to do, a lot of documentation is required, and then you make the application. It goes up before a board of directors. If that board allows you to have the marker, if they approve it, in other words, then you end up being sent additional paperwork, and you have to proofread everything and make sure the info is correct. And then ultimately, last thing, they will have you pay a certain amount. At this time, it was $1,450 to get a state historical marker. This property had been modified to a degree, so it was not eligible for to go on the National Register of Historic Places, and that's why I opted for the marker instead.
And we
we're
talk
real
about
proud of it.
modifications off camera. We was talking about that you can remember, even when you
Yes.
took over the store, some of the primitive restroom.
No restroom
No
really at
restroom,
all.
really.
We'll just say, to be nice,
Right.
there was never a restroom here. And there was never a phone. There was never heat and air conditioning. There have been a lot of changes in the last few years. The last proprietor of the store was my first cousin, Sam Creighton, very well known here on the mountaintop and well loved. And when Sam passed away, we thought that the legacy of this little country store had probably gone with him. But fortunately, I was able to acquire this and remodel, kind of repair would be more accurate. And once we did that, I rented it out, and it was ran as a cafe for 3 years. And now James and Ellen Rogers own it. Just sold it to them, and I'm thrilled with what they're doing with it.
James Rogers, the current owner, and also the one who is basically putting in, once again, the use of the kitchen.
Yes.
Where today my family's getting served catfish, there's hamburgers, there's several things on the menu.
Wonderful.
So whole families can
pork,
come in and get whatever they want, right?
They can. And they serve basically 3 meals a day, 7 days a week now. So they have different people coming in to prepare breakfast, lunch, and supper. And Sam Creighton and the 2 generations before him that ran this store would just be thrilled that this is benefiting not just the community of Coalmont, but other areas here on the mountaintop too. Because it was ran by 3 generations consecutively, and it went from being a general merchandise store to more of a grocery store. But when I was a child, there were several little stores around, and they didn't try to compete with each other. They tried to kind of have their own unique things to sell, and I thought that was great.
That's awesome.
I just thought that was great. And they were in very close proximity. Coalmont's a really tiny town. But I just felt that this store was so interesting because the building supplies, well, it's a Sears and Roebuck building, by the way. So the building supplies came up on the Mountain Goat train, which ran right behind the store and property here. And the supplies were brought up, delivered here, and it was built on site by William Creighton. And then his son, Robert Asa, or Bob Creighton as he was well known, took it over after William Creighton passed, and that was in 1945. My Uncle Bob ran it from 1945 until 1975 when he passed away, and Sam Creighton ran it from 75 until 2012. So long history.
Yeah, and I've got to give a shout out to one of my good friends that sort of told me about this cool little place in Tennessee, Jim Sartan, which the Sartan family goes back to Sheriff Mr. Sartan, probably around this area. But a big shout out to Jim for telling us about this incredible little place, but beautiful, with just the beauty on this mountain, and also what we find out inside. In just a little bit, we're going to go inside and actually show you just some of the antiques. Now, Miss Lynn, we're going to walk right over here towards the train tracks, because a few things has changed. Not really what they called on the square, but just in the circle of the community here.
Right.
A few buildings has been torn down, new buildings have been placed. We'll find y'all right over there in just a few moments. Stay tuned. Miss Lynn, now on what some would call a square, but really just this area of the community, right in front of the Creighton store, things have changed, including the emergency medical service building.
Yes.
That wasn't there always. What was there?
In that area, there was a company store. Everything here, most of the houses, the one that the Creightons lived in across the road, for example, were all built by the Sewanee Fuel and Iron Company. They ran the coal mines in this county and on top of the mountain, several counties actually. So the general store that was original to Coalmont, the town of Coalmont, was built there where the emergency ambulance service is now. It was a big building. It supplied everything, all types of feed for livestock and farm implements. It was groceries, the dry goods, clothing, work clothes, oh my goodness, just it goes on and on. It was also the post office. It was everything to Coalmont was in one building here. At that time, there was a hotel here in town. In that direction, just above the old bank building that's behind the extension offices here. There was a little hotel up on the hill that was just charming that burned down when I was very, very young, and it was called a wigwam.
Wow.
And it would hold, that would be where the workers that would come in to build the company houses, things like that, would stay, all of them, at the wigwam.
Wow.
There was a little tea room around the corner and down the road here, and they would take their meals there a lot. And then, of course, once this was built, in the very early 1900s, they never had a cafe, but they would make sandwiches, bologna and cheese sandwiches, and things like that. Something very simple for the people. And that was done throughout the history of this little store. So there was more here. The post office sits over in this direction now, but it's been moved. It was originally part of the company store. Then the bank building was built soon after, and there was the bank on one side and the post office on the other. They shared that building. So it's changed.
Wonderful history, Miss Lynn. And then what's cool is you're still carrying on this history to the next generations, which is good.
Good. I love that.
We pronounced it Creighton, but it's Creighton that they pronounce around here.
That's only here that it's called Creighton. You go anywhere else in the country and you'll hear Creighton. But yes, they pronounced it Creighton. They did. And another fact about this little store that I want to mention, in running this for over 100 years, there was never any tobacco or any alcohol sold ever in this little store.
Wow.
So I think that's pretty cool.
That is
And
cool.
it always had a little pot-bellied stove. That was the only heat. Opening up the windows and doors was the only air. But people would come here and sit around that little stove, pot-bellied stove, and sometimes they would be whittling, but most of the time they would just simply be chatting and laughing. And the owners and proprietors of this store were wonderful to keep a lot of laughter, and just make people feel good about being there. So there were a lot of stories and probably a lot of lies told around that little store too. And I understand that that's the way it was down at the company store before my time.
Gotcha. So several little places like that. Something we've got away from our communities, and that's what this show is about, is to bring us back inside our communities and get you out of the house into your community. This is a beautiful setting for such as that. You can bring your whole family here. Now, the pricing is very reasonable.
Yes.
You can get a good meal. Where else can you come find this kind of history with some good catfish, cheeseburgers, hamburgers, and a whole lot more? Pulled pork. And well known for barbecue, aren't they?
Well known for barbecue.
And is that the same Sam that was kin to you? I saw the Sam's Barbecue.
Sam's Corner is the name of it, and that was after my cousin Sam, who was the last owner and proprietor. Yes.
I got you. So,
yes. And it's right here on a corner, so what better name?
Yeah, picnic tables. You can eat outside or inside. And speaking of inside, we're going to take you inside, where you'll find other hard-to-find antiques that is only found here in Coalmont, Tennessee, and unique for this store also. They've done a good job. The new owners have done a good job filling those shelves.
Yes.
You had mentioned earlier about those shelves, how unique they was. We'll go inside and let you show us those.
Sure.
Stay tuned, that much more coming up.
One of the unique features of the store are the way the shelves were built. Back in the day, they had no tools the way we do now, and so they hand-notched strips of wood, both at the rear and the front of the shelves, so that they could be moved and repositioned at different heights. I thought that was pretty cool, and these are original to the store. They were all the way down this side of the building and all the way down the other side.
Now, several antiques that we find in here, but there is really one main one that's original to the store. Is that right? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, there is, Jonathan, and that would be up here on the top of the cooler. The scale is from the 1800s, and that was original to the first owner of the store. In other words, bought that, and it actually has been recalibrated so it could still weigh produce and meats and so on. But that was what they would weigh their deli meats and cheeses and things like that on always. which they sold, I'm sure, a lot of, especially second and third generation store did. Pot-bellied stove is no longer functional, sadly, but it is the second generation pot-bellied stove in here. They had one prior to this, and it was just broken down too badly. So many years ago, they replaced it with this one. We have it fixed to where they can't really build a fire in it now, because a building that's well over 100 years old would be in serious trouble if something went awry. So it is there just for looks and to remind people that for over 100 years, people from Coalmont and all the surrounding areas came here, sat around that little pot-bellied stove and told stories and laughed and just enjoyed themselves immensely. I want to thank a lot of people, Jonathan, for helping with this remake of the store, so to speak. For one thing, there were so many people in this little town of Coalmont, Tennessee, who came here and helped voluntarily and gave their time and their energy to us. It was amazing after Sam Creighton passed, just what took place here. And there are just so many, I couldn't possibly name them by name, but I appreciate it immensely. And then this historical marker, just the fact that I was given help by the agency in Nashville on applying for it, and the fact that it was approved just thrills me, because it's nice to have something here in this little town of Coalmont that commemorates its history. And it's a pretty rich history. The town of Coalmont is located in the very center of Grundy County here on the Cumberland Plateau. So that's why the emergency medical facility is here, the ambulance service, in other words, so that it can go in all directions and serve the entire county. And so this little town should have some significance, I think. So we appreciate everything that everyone has done, and we appreciate you letting people know, Jonathan, about our little hometown of Coalmont.
We hope you're enjoying the program, and we want to hear from you, maybe for some show ideas or for more information about what we do and how we can tell your next story. Give us a call today at 931-409-7151, or simply just email us at communitytvtn, all one word, at gmail.com, or check out our website at www.communitytvtn.com. We would love to hear from you. Send us your email, communitytvtn@gmail.com.
Well, here we are back at Foster Falls, but today the show is not going to focus on Foster Falls so much as the south end of the fiery Gizzard. And so we are right here, but how do they know that? Anyway, we're right here, and we're going to be following the Rim Trail. A couple of campsites. We'll go to the Small Wilds area if we have time and then come back. But today's hike is going to feature some waterfalls that are unnamed and some very nice overlooks. So get ready for a nice hike. Hope you've got your hiking shoes on and ready to enjoy a hike here at the southern end of the fiery Gizzard. Let's go. One thing you need to know about Foster Falls and this part of the Gizzard, we're in Marion County. Now you look online, you'll see South Cumberland. This is part of the South Cumberland State Park. The visitor center is located in Mont Eagle, but most of the park is not. And this part of the park is in Marion County, but very well worth the drive.
As we stand here and look at this, reminded about a couple of months ago over here in the early fall, and this was dry as a bone. It was down to about 10. I've never seen it that dry before. This Foster Falls we're looking at now is actually a dry waterfall a couple of months ago.
As we approach the head of the Fiery Gizzard Trail, got some steps here, and one thing that you might not realize that treated lumber steps can be just as slippery as wet rocks. So you got to be careful on this little neck of the trail, because after you get to the steps, then you've got some rocks that are kind of wet. So take your time, don't get in a big hurry. And we're about to get to the little bridge here over the Fiery Gizzard Creek. We're taking our time because we got some wet leaves on the wet rocks. And we're to the bridge. This creek right here will lead to Foster Falls, and it is really going good today. And we're going to get a good look at Foster Falls in just a few minutes from a natural overlook. And here we're getting ready to start the southern end of the Fiery Gizzard Trail. You stay on this trail for the next 13 or 14 miles, you're going to end up in Tracy City at the Grundy Forest Trailhead. We're not going to do that today. We might do it later on. That's a future hike, but we're going to concentrate on about 2.5 miles of the south end of the Fiery Gizzard Trail. So let's go. Now this is my favorite view of Foster Falls. From the trail, overlooks the waterfall and the plunge pool, and it is absolutely beautiful. Look over across the way to Horsetail Falls, where we were a few minutes ago. There's an overlook, I call it a tourist overlook, Right over there is a wooden deck, and it's easy if you're not a hiker. If you have physical limitations that might keep you from coming to this overlook, that is an easy walk from the parking lot, maybe 200 yards from the parking lot, easy walk from the car, if you just want to come see the waterfall and then go back home. But over here, if I don't fall down, this is my favorite view of Foster Falls. Now, back in the early fall, as we mentioned, this waterfall was very dry, and my buddy Deb and I were able to walk where those shiny rocks are, right at the top of the falls, but no trouble at all because the rocks were dry. Hard to believe now. Well, we can hear water. That means we're coming up on a little creek here, or stream, that forms a really nice waterfall. One of those waterfalls that, as far as we know, doesn't have a name. And getting to the base of it will be very difficult, although we're not going to give up on it, but not today.